I call to order the meeting of the Verona Common Council for Monday, June 23rd, 2025 at 7 p.m. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll have the roll.
Alderperson Harrison.
Here.
Alderperson Helmke.
Here.
Alderperson Hoax.
Present.
Alderperson Lytle.
Here.
Alderperson Swanson.
Here.
Alderperson Tucker Long.
Here.
And Alderperson Weiss.
Here.
All right, we have quorum in the room, so we can proceed. We'll move on to item 4, which is public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so.
Hi, I haven't been here before, so he's helping me out a little bit. I'm Jenny Pavlovic from 204 Melody Lane, and I'm here to comment on excessive open burning in my neighborhood that often has become a nuisance and a health hazard. I know I've contacted a few of you. This spring it's gotten out of hand several times, resulting in very poor air quality. And my request is that this summer our neighborhood air is safe to breathe and we have smoke-free space in which to enjoy our own properties. Problems are that people are violating current ordinances which are not always enforced effectively, in my opinion, from what I've seen. One is the open burning ordinance and one is the public nuisance affecting health ordinance for noxious odors. And the open burning ordinance could use clarification and tightening up, which I know some of you have been discussing. Please consider adopting the following. Allow small cooking fires or clean burning bonfires of clean dry wood for a maximum of 3 hours, and I'll get back to that. Do not allow fires to be left unattended or to smolder overnight. Do not allow fires to create excessive smoke and smoke out the neighbors, and this could and probably should be enforced under the current noxious odor ordinance. Do not allow burning of leaves, yard waste, green or wet wood, or anything that produces thick smoke, which is, I think, violating the current ordinance. Do not allow burning of furniture or trash or treated wood, which occasionally does occur, even though that violates the current ordinance too. And identify clearly who to call for help when the open burning and or noxious odor ordinances are being violated on weekdays, weeknights, and weekends. How will the ordinances be enforced effectively? Who enforces them? And are they familiar with the relevant ordinances? Do they know it's their responsibility? How many times is a neighbor allowed to violate the ordinance without a consequence and keep doing it? So these restrictions, like I mentioned, a 3-hour limit on a fire, would likely not be enforced unless the neighborhood's being negatively affected and there's a complaint. So somebody could have a bonfire in their backyard for 6 hours, and if it's not bothering anybody, it wouldn't be an issue. Nobody would hear about it. People could enjoy a clean burning fire in their firing and put it out when they're done, and probably everybody would be happy. And a little consideration that way would go a long way. So I want to give an example from this spring of something that's been going on. On May 29th, adjacent neighbors had a contained fire in their backyard fire pit, which was fine. They went to bed without putting it out and they let it smolder all night, as they've done many times, and I had to get up and close my windows. In the morning, they left for work without putting out the smoke, and my entire yard stunk of smoke, and the fire pit emitted smoke all morning. And when it was still smoldering and putting out smoke at lunchtime with nobody home, I called the non-emergency fire department number. Firefighters arrived, and one of the firemen went into the yard and decided it wasn't an issue, even though the fire pit was still smoking after more than 16 hours. He trespassed into the yard but didn't take any other action about the smoke. And he said he doesn't write tickets, and a police officer arrived, which I think is protocol for the calls. When an officer is available, they'll go on a fire call, is my understanding. And I insisted something be done about the smoke and the odor, and the officer knocked on the front door, but nobody was home. And he said he'd never had a call like this, so he had to look into what he could do, because normally fire covers that, I think. And that he would try to reach the homeowner to get the smoke stopped. So the officer seemed to want to help within the limits that he had, but when everybody left, the smoke was still billowing out. And honestly, at that point, I thought, I don't know what happened after that. I honestly thought, why do I even call? I should have just taken a bucket of water and gone over there and put the smoke out myself. But then I would be trespassing, right? So I shouldn't be doing that, so I didn't. In another quick example, a neighbor on the other side of me burned yard waste all weekend, and which violates the current ordinance. And Sunday afternoon, I went over and asked them if they would please put the fire out, because I wanted to do some work in my yard. And they continued to burn. And eventually I called the fire department non-emergency number. The battalion chief spoke to the neighbors, and as the fire continued to burn while they were talking, and she talked to them for quite a while, and she made an effort, but she told them that burning yard waste violates the ordinance, and then after she left, they put more yard waste on the fire and just kept burning. So people are making an effort, but it's not always fixing the problem. So I would ask that you please act soon and not let the entire summer go by without updating the open burning ordinance and being crystal clear about how it and the noxious odor ordinance are being enforced now, even before anything else changes. I think that's something that could be clarified now. The consequences are too high for our neighborhood to have to put up with this all summer. And I thank you for listening, for taking my concerns seriously, and for acting promptly.
Thank you. We are still in public comment. If any other members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so. And just to clarify one point, while members of the public are allowed to bring up any comments they want during public comment, alders are not allowed to comment on things unless they're on the agenda. So obviously we can't comment on the public comment. We don't need to be reminded by our attorney. But I just want to say that the city is looking at this and expect to see something in the future. And seeing no one else approaching the microphone for public comment, we will move on to item 5, which is approval of minutes from the June 11th, 2025 Common Council meeting. Questions, comments, corrections, or motions to approve? Alder Harrison.
Move to approve.
Motion by Alder Harrison. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Homke. Last chance for corrections. Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the June 11th, 2025 Common Council meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And the minutes are approved. We'll move on to item 6, which is the appointment of the chair of the Senior Services Committee. Former Verona Alder Brandon Braithwaite was the Senior Services Committee chair for about a month. And since he has moved to Minnesota and resigned, we need a new Senior Services Committee chair. I think Alder Weiss would do a good job at it, and I would ask for a confirmation from the City Council. Alder Tucker Long.
Do we need a motion to approve?
Yeah.
Okay. I move to approve Alder Weiss as chair of the Senior Services Committee.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Homke. All those in favor of approving the appointment of Alder Weiss to the chair of the Senior Services Committee, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. We'll move on to 6B, which is regarding the appointment of Ralph Stern to the Tourism Commission. As we did at the last City Council meeting, we changed the ordinance to say a Verona resident or a business person for the Tourism Commission. Ralph Stern is one of the co-owners of Alice Good, and I think he would be great and bring a fresh perspective on the Tourism Commission. He has a lot of ideas on how to bring people into the city, which is what the Tourism Commission is supposed to do. So I would, I guess, if it's okay with everyone, entertain a motion to approve the appointment. Alder Homke.
I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Ralph Stern to the Tourism Commission.
Motion by Alder Homke. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Harrison. All those in favor of approving the appointment of Ralph Stern to the Tourism Commission, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. We will move on to item 6C, which is the Parks and Recreation Month proclamation, which I will read to you now. Whereas Parks and Recreation are an integral part of the city of Verona, and whereas Parks and Recreation promote time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being, and whereas Parks and Recreation encourage physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming areas, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles, and whereas Park and Recreation programming and education activities such as youth sports and enrichment courses are critical to childhood development, and whereas Parks and Recreation increase a community's economic prosperity through an increase in property values, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature. And whereas the dedicated employees of the City of Verona Parks Department maintain 25 parks and 4 conservancy special use areas that encompass 160 acres with a wide range of facilities for residents to enjoy year-round. And whereas the City of Verona Urban Forestry Program maintains and cares for over 4,400 publicly owned trees, and whereas the dedicated employees of the City of Verona Recreation Department offer over 40 youth and adult programs year-round, which include sports, STEM, art, fitness, and other enrichment courses. And whereas the City of Verona Recreation Department operates the beach at Fireman's Park, which provides many recreation activities for over 10,000 visitors each season. And whereas the City of Verona recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources and celebrates the dedicated employees who make Verona a great place to live, learn, and play. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Luke Diaz, declare the month of July to be Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Verona. And I just want to add thank you so much to all of our parks employees.
Thank you, Mayor. And we have Jeremy from the Parks Department here tonight to receive the proclamation.
Excellent.
Go stand before him.
Should I here or should I?
Do you want to do it up here?
Yeah. The flags are a good backdrop.
Very true. I get to actually be up with the common council. This is exciting. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Now, do we?
Should we do it like
You
this?
wanna do this?
Sure. All right, we'll do it.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate it for the
Absolutely.
recognition. And yeah, can I say thank you to all the parks employees as well?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to use the microphone.
Okay. I would like to also just do a little name drop and say thank you to all of the parks employees. So we, of course, have Chad Churchill, Dan Dasher, Ian Whiting, of course, Casey, who everybody knows, Casey Dudley, been with the city of Verona for a very long time. And just thanks to everybody that we put in all this hard work, and I appreciate you guys' recognition. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
And hopefully there'll be even more parks to be maintained in the future. That concludes Mayor's business. We'll move on to item 7, which is announcements. Any announcements from the council? Alder Tucker Long.
There are cards going around for staff, so make sure you sign them before you go.
Any other announcements from council? Seeing no other announcements, we'll move on to item 8, which is the administrator's report. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. One, just a logistical item with the administrator memo. You'll note that we added potential motion as part of like one of the things that's part of the memo. When it's blank, that's literally me sitting in my office, throwing up my hands, not knowing what to put there because I don't know what you guys are going to do. So there's some of that, or it's a discussion item. So if it's blank, you as the body always have the leeway to work within whatever bounds. It doesn't matter if there's a potential motion listed or not. But that's kind of why it is blank. The other thing I had was Madison Metro now has posted information on their website about the expansion of D2. They've got schedules listed and things like that. So if the public is interested in taking a peek at the expanded service and how it's going to work, Madison Metro has updated their website. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Aulick? Seeing no questions, we'll move on to item 9, which is the engineer's report.
Thank you, Mayor.
As you can see, Carla's not able to make it today, so I get to be here two meetings in a row. So as far as updates that we've got, they're in the packet. Country View Road, some more work on the ponds is continuing. Northbound and southbound roads, subbase is being worked on, and then utilities are being installed. For Laser Street Extension, we're near completion on that. Punch list work remaining and surface paving planned in the next couple of months. No new things on page 2, but page 3, we've got under Mark Drive, the 90% plans and specs are under review by the city currently. And I believe phase 1 is getting started shortly. On the next page, north and southeast water booster station design. So things are wrapping up on those. Looking at potentially adding a generator at the southeast booster station prior to completion of the water master plan. For well 6, that is also getting finished up right now, just waiting, televising and test pumping for final approval. And then next item is Lower Badger Mill Creek Interceptor. Just had a meeting this morning with the district, and looks like the work in Shady Oak Lane is planned for right after the triathlon is done, and then they're planning to pave by late October for both final binder and surface. Final completion won't happen until next June of 2026. Next is Kettle Creek North. So the surface paving just occurred a couple weeks ago on phase 5 and 6 for Kettle Creek North. We've got phase 8 plans, and those are currently under review right now. Ardent Glen, the water main and sanitary sewer is finished, and they're currently working on placing storm sewer for phase 3B of Ardent Glen. Then SSM Health, the fill-only permit has started, so they're able to start doing some of the earth moving, and that's underway with the plan. We'll be reviewing the final stormwater management plan hopefully soon. The project will include the reconstruction and urbanization of Valley Road, which will be an extension of including extension of the public sanitary and water to the site, as well as the construction of the building. Under the stormwater services, we are wrapping up the annual public stormwater facility inspections and hope to have the report on those to the city here in the next couple of weeks. And then basically next couple of weeks. And then we've also started outreach for the private stormwater facility owners for inspection of those facilities. And then finally, stormwater webpage updates. That's on my docket of things to do actually this week. So I'm hoping to have that over to tomorrow and city staff here in the next week or so. Happy to answer any other questions. If I can't answer them, I'll make notes to have Carla respond.
Thank you. Any questions on the engineer's report? Seeing no hands, we'll move on to item 10, which is committee reports. First up, we have 10A Finance Committee. Alder Honke.
I'd like to make a motion for payment of the bills in the amount of $951,781.58.
Motion by Alder Honke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. Alder Honke.
Yeah, we have two major payments going out. One is in the amount of $123,000 for a wheel loader used by Public Works to Airing Equipment Company. The second payment is for $421,169 for the Fitrona EMS second half payment.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of paying the bills in the amount specified signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And that motion passes. Alder Honke.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve resolution authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $2,120,000 of general obligation promissory notes, Series 2025A.
Motion by Alder Honke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. Alder Humke.
Subject to satisfaction of the conditions set forth in Section 17 of this resolution, the mayor and city clerk are authorized, empowered, and directed to make, execute, issue, and sell the financial institution that submitted the proposal, the purchaser on behalf of and in the name of the city, notes aggregating the principal amount of not to exceed $2,120,000. The purchase price to be paid to the city for the note shall not be less than 99% nor more than 107% of the principal amount of the notes. Projects funded by the borrowing include the Legion Street and West Verona Avenue signalized intersection improvements, a water system master plan and pressure monitoring and calibration, wastewater system master plan and flow monitoring and calibration, upsizing the west side wastewater pump station pumps, motors, and controls, a water tower sitting study in the central water pressure zone, rehabilitating well 4, and the purchase of a replacement for Verona Fire Department Squad 5. Except for the Squad 5 replacement for the fire department, the debt for the infrastructure projects will be allocated to TIDs 9 and 11. And we have Todd from Ellers here, if there's any questions.
I guess I have one quick question. Is this different than the way we typically do bonding?
This is the same way we did it last year. The only difference this year and last year as compared to prior years is rather than taking bids on a council meeting night and bringing them to you, we're now delegating that authority to the city administrator or finance director within certain parameters that are set in the resolution. And the idea is if we do it the way we used to, we have to sell the notes on a day the common council meets. By not having that restriction, we're more flexible. We could, for example, shift the sale back. If something happened in the market and we thought it was not a good day to sell, we simply could push it back a week or 2 weeks. So more flexibility,
So then in theory, we'll end up with a better deal.
in theory.
Okay. Alder Humke.
I'm wondering if I should amend what I just said because it says the mayor and city clerk. Should I say that the
That portion is accurate because
It is.
that relates to the execution of
Okay.
the actual documents.
Great.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of resolution number 25-019, authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $2,120,000 general obligation promissory notes, Series 2025A, with the conditions specified by Alder Humke, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And that motion passes. Anything further from finance?
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. With that, we will move on to 10B, which is Public Safety and Welfare Committee. Alder Host.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to deny operator license application for Courtney Darrow.
Motion by Alder Host. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. Alder Host.
Thank you. The Public Safety and Welfare Committee meeting earlier today, we had our attorney and Chief Dresser, and he presented a letter of denial to us with several reasons that we feel it's prudent to deny this application. It's on page 54 of the packet as well, if you guys want to review that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion to deny? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of denying the operator license for Courtney Darrow signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And that motion passes. Anything further from Public Safety?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Excellent. With that, we'll move on to item 11, which is new business. First up, we have 11A, which is the discussion and possible action regarding the acquisition of lots 2 and 3 of CSM number 13943 by the City of Verona from Anarev LLC for stormwater purposes, and including an agreement that Anarev LLC pay all property taxes for 2024 and 2025. Mr. Olick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The stormwater ponds are located near Arrowhead Pharma, and we need to transfer these 2 lots so that the Public Works Department can maintain the stormwater ponds.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Jocker Long.
I move that we acquire lots 2 and 3 of CSM number 13943 by the City of Verona from Anarev LLC for stormwater purposes, and including an agreement that Anarev LLC pay all property taxes for 2024 and 2025.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Homke. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of acquiring lots 2 and 3 of CSM number 13943 from Anarev LLC for stormwater purposes and including an agreement that Anarev LLC pay all property taxes for 2024 and 2025, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. I will move on to 11B, which is the discussion and possible action regarding the public comment policy for the City of Verona Standing Committee and Task Force meetings. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The public comment policy is based on the public comment ordinance that applies to common council meetings. With certain conditions, the public comment policy grants members of the public to speak at standing committee and task force meetings for 5 minutes on any topic.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments or motions on this item? Alder Tucker Long.
I have 2 potential changes I would like to discuss. Should those come as motions, or should we talk about them first and then make a motion, or how?
I think it might be best to talk about them, and then if there's general consensus, or at least it seems like enough people, you could make it as part of the motion.
So 2 things. The first is in the definitions. Right now, we have cameras defined as a way to project a live image, but cameras don't project, they capture. So I think we should change the wording to capture a live image or convey a live image. And then in the second to the last paragraph, it says, during public comment, the speaker can walk to the podium and must speak into a microphone. Many of our task force and commissions do not meet in a room that has either a podium or a microphone. And so requiring that would make it very hard to hold meetings because we'd all have to be in here. Also, it says that speakers cannot hand out items in the meeting to members or city staff, as these items cannot be clearly seen virtually. I'm wondering if we could amend that to say if there are virtual members attending, they could not, or they must provide a way. We've had a lot of residents come in and they have pictures to share or things like that, and those are things that we can share virtually during the meetings, and they're really helpful to helping to explain the issues that are being brought forth by public comment in these in task force and committees where you're talking about things that are much more specific than public comment in, say, a common council meeting. And so this restriction seems a little bit harsh for me.
I guess calling on myself, I guess I would potentially ask Mara Trustee about this, but I know in the large conference room, there's a way to show items to people virtually. Is there a way in this conference room to show items to people virtually? Because I just feel like if a citizen came in and they're probably not going to have pre-read all the rules, and if they came in and handed stuff to us and we just threw it away or handed it back, that wouldn't create a positive impression of the city. And if it's something that's essential for understanding the issue, I guess I would rather have people have it than not. But yeah, does anyone know, I guess, if there's a way to do it for this room? Does someone want to knock on Mara's window? Alder Tucker Long.
I mean, technology-wise, there's always the ability to take a cell phone picture and email it out to everybody, but Mara can speak to specifically the technology in this room.
Yeah. Did you hear the question? Yes. Okay.
So if they're handing out papers, they would need to do that, pass it amongst you. But if they have a laptop here, they can plug right in and we'd be able to show that virtually to anybody attending virtually or in the room as well.
Gotcha. I guess I have a question then, I guess, for our attorney. Does everyone have to see the same information? Is that like a legal requirement?
Anyone who's at the meeting should be able, whether it's a committee member or a member of the public, should be able to see the same information that is being shared with the committee members, is the general rule.
Okay, so that is a legal requirement then?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's part of the open meetings law.
Okay, thank you. Alder Tucker Long, then Alder Weiss.
Before Attorney Kleinmeyer leaves, I have a follow-up question to that. Does it have to be concurrently viewed at this, like, at the same time? Or is it something where it could be, you know, we pass it out to people and then somebody takes pictures of it and emails it out so they get it a few minutes later? Or we include a digital copy of it in the packet that goes out after the meeting? Or does it have to be simultaneously?
It really should be simultaneous.
Okay.
In other words, I mean, if you have members of the public who are participating in the meeting or watching the meeting, anything that the committee gets to see, they should get to see too.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing that you could potentially move forward with this and honestly delete the entire paragraph that you have there and just essentially, because sometimes it's a case by case. I mean, and the other thing that members of the public should realize, if they're handing something to committee members, that's likely going to become a public record too. And not to say that they shouldn't do that, but I think that they should just be aware of that before they do it.
Alder Weiss.
If the thing that we're concerned about is the simultaneous viewing of the material, whatever it is, we could just specify that like only things that can be viewed simultaneously or whatever. Like whatever the very thing is that we're concerned about, I think that making that into the rule rather than like something by proxy where it's like, because if you could hand something out in such a way that it could be viewed by everybody simultaneously, then it's okay, right? Because maybe there isn't anybody meeting remotely or something, you know? I think it's just, if we're like, I would prefer that the rule just denote the thing that we're actually concerned about.
Alder Lytle.
It seems like a pretty easy fix here would be, instead of saying, as these things cannot be clearly seen virtually, it would be, if these things cannot be clearly seen virtually. And that gets at the intent of simultaneous information and doesn't lock us into anything, so we can evaluate on a case-by-case basis.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think, again, with the large conference room, we specifically spent a decent amount of money on all that equipment so that people could view things simultaneously when they're virtual. So at least in the large conference room, people should be able to hand stuff out because people virtually would be able to see it regardless. Other thoughts, or does someone want to take a crack at a motion? Alder Tucker Long.
I will take a crack at a motion. I move to approve the public comment policy for the City of Verona Standing Committee and Task Force meetings with the following changes. In the definitions section, under cameras, change the word project to capture. And in the second to the last paragraph, beginning with during public comment, strike can walk to the podium and then change must speak into a microphone to must speak into a microphone if there are virtual attendees present. And then in the last sentence of that paragraph, beginning, the speaker cannot hand out items in the meeting to members or city staff as these items, change it to if these items, so change as to if.
Before there's a potential second, could I ask a question? Would it be possible to change it, to just say instead of for the microphone part, if people are virtual, just to say if a microphone is available? Because during Plan Commission, there is a microphone and people are supposed to speak into it.
This policy doesn't apply to
Oh, it
Plan
doesn't apply?
Commission.
Okay. Okay, and I guess none of the other meetings are recorded.
Correct.
I guess I would still ask for if available.
If available.
Yeah.
I'm amenable to that change. So to update that first sentence then, in the second to the last paragraph, during public comment, the speaker must speak into a microphone if a microphone is available.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Harrison. Question to staff. Did you get all that?
We will, after the fact, when we watch the video tomorrow, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. Clerk Lick has gotten it all down. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the public comment policy for the City of Verona Standing Committee and Task Force meetings, as read by Alder Tucker Long, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no? And that motion passes. We'll move on to 11C, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the Ardent Glen Development Agreement Phase 4. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mayor. Veridian is seeking to start Phase 4 of the Ardent Glen subdivision, which consists of 29 lots. Public improvements for Phase 4 shall commence on or about July 13th, 2025, and shall be substantially completed on or about October 31st, 2025. However, the actual commencement date of construction and projected completion date shall be determined by the contract between the developer and its contractors, subject to approval by the city.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments or motions? Alder Leto.
Yeah, I'd make a motion, we approve the Ardent Glen Development Agreement Phase 4, contingent on final approval by the city attorney and city administrator.
Motion by Alder Lytle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Host. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the Ardent Glen Development Agreement Phase 4 with the contingencies specified signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And that motion passes. We'll move on to 11D, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the Kettle Creek North Development Agreement Phase 8. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. H&H Properties ILLC is seeking to start Phase 8 of the Kettle Creek North subdivision, which consists of 8 lots. And also, just as a point of information, both developers would like to start right after the 4th of July, on or around there, so they can keep moving. So I would expect the timeframes to be similar to Ardent Glen above, that item above. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Honke.
I make a motion to approve the Kettle Creek North Development Agreement Phase 8, contingent upon final approval by the city attorney and city administrator.
Motion by Alder Humke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison? No, Alder Hoax. Sorry, it was like a voice from over there. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the Kettle Creek North Development Agreement Phase 8 with contingency specified signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. With that, we'll move on to item 12, which is old business. First up, we have 12A, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the decision on the petition for judicial review in the case regarding the City of Verona versus the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District and related litigation options. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Verona sought judicial review of the DNR September 9, 2024 decision to conditionally approve Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District's proposal to amend the Dane County Area-Wide Water Quality Management Plan so that the MMSD may cease its discharge of effluent into the Badger Mill Creek. The decision affirmed the DNR's decision.
Which is unfortunate, in my opinion. We're here to get an update from our attorney, so I think it would, since it covers legal strategy and advice concerning strategy, I think it would make the most sense to receive the advice from the attorney in closed session. But before someone makes a motion to go in closed session if they want, I would say, does anyone want to say anything in open session? Alder Lytle.
I'd just like to clarify, early before this was filed, I sought some informal feedback from legal counsel in terms of the fact that I do serve on the MMSD commission, and elected to participate in this as an elected official in the city of Verona and have recused myself from any discussions in closed session or motions on the MMSD side. So I plan to participate in our city's closed session unless someone suggests that that still creates any kind of conflict of interest.
All right, we're getting okays from the attorney. Anything else for open session? With that, I would entertain a motion to go in closed session. Alder Tucker Long.
I move that we go into closed session to discuss item 12A, decision on petition for judicial review in the case regarding City of Verona v. Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District and related litigation options. The Common Council may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the City of Verona who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the Common Council with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The Common Council may reconvene in open session and take action on the closed session item.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Humke. This is, of course, a roll call vote. If Clerk Lick would be so kind as to read the roll.
Alderperson Harrison.
Aye.
Alderperson Helmke.
Aye.
Alderperson Hoax.
Aye.
Alderperson Lytle.
Aye.
Alderperson Swanson.
Aye.
Alderperson Tucker Long.
Aye.
Alderperson Weiss.
Aye.
All right, we will be in closed session as soon as we're off the air. My understanding is we'd be going to the large conference room for this. Is that correct? Okay. We will rejoin also with Alder Swanson, who is joining us virtually in the large conference room. All right, we have concluded the closed session topic on this item. We'll have more information in the future. With that, we will move on to 12B, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the possible sale of city-owned property at 2159 Range Trail and the possible acquisition of property for the site of the new Public Works Building facility. I know it's noticed as a closed session, but I think we can handle most or potentially all of this in open session. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Aulick for a summary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is included to consider a potential sale of city-owned property at 2159 Range Trail and a possible acquisition of property for a site of new Public Works facility. And as you mentioned, the Common Council can go into closed session, but only to discuss the terms and conditions of a potential land sale and land acquisition.
Mr. Clymer?
So I think we're here to discuss at least two properties. One is the property that the city owns on Range Trail right now, and I don't know how you want to approach this, but it may make sense to talk about that one first, as I think, and Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what city staff believes might be appropriate is to put together an RFP for people who may be interested in purchasing the property, where as part of, I guess, and part of that's going to be a discussion of what you might want to see in the RFP, and obviously it can come back to you before it would go out, but find out how people would potentially want to use that property if they were going to be willing to purchase it from the city, and what would they be willing to pay for it. And obviously we have an appraisal that was performed on the property that would be, it's a public record, it's free for any potential purchasers to review. And I think that I believe that appraisal identifies like mixed use as probably the highest and best use of the property. But again, that I don't necessarily see a reason why the city would want to place any limitations on what somebody may want to purchase and use the property for. Obviously, use would be subject to the Common Council's determination if it's something different than what's in the comp plan now, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be something the Common Council doesn't want to consider.
And then the other thing we need to consider would be acquiring the property on Wayland for the new Public Works building.
Yeah, so my understanding is that that's one property that city staff is focused on, I think, in light of, probably in light of the fact that there's already some city property over in that area. Doesn't mean that you're limited to that, but we did get an appraisal, the city did get an appraisal on that property. And I believe that Public Works Department has looked at that land and believes that it would work, especially from a logistical standpoint. And so, again, this is another situation where the city isn't limited in potentially purchasing that land, but there's also nothing wrong with, if the Common Council wishes to do so, to authorize city staff to at least make an offer for that at an amount that the Common Council can live with. And as Jamie noted, you know, I would say you know, whether or not to sell land and to buy land is ultimately a policy decision. However, to the extent that you want to get into, especially let's say for the acquisition of the land, into the terms and conditions of what you're willing to offer, that's certainly a discussion that you can have in closed session if you want. You can also authorize something, and I'm just saying this as an example only, but for, you know, if the Common Council's thought was we got an appraisal on the property on Wayland Road and we're willing to offer, you know, I think it was $150,000 an acre. I mean, if the Common Council's of the opinion that that's what the offer should be, you wouldn't necessarily have to go into closed session to make that decision.
And we could also authorize staff to talk to the property owner with the understanding that staff would come back with, you know, potential negotiations and offer.
Absolutely.
I think we need to talk about the property acquisition for Public Works first, because if we're not 100% sure on where it's going to go, we need to keep the Range Trail property as a fallback. We can't sell the Range Trail property without making a decision on where the Public Works property is going to go and where to acquire new property, because if we sell it and then we don't have property, we're really back at square one on the Public Works building, and at some point it does need to get built. So I guess I would ask the council, where do we want the Public Works building to go? You know,
If I might, the only caveat I would add to that, because I think that that's correct, is unless the Common Council is of the belief that, you know, whatever else happens, you don't want the Public Works property, you don't want the new Public Works building to be on the Range Trail. I mean, if that's ultimately your conclusion, then you could, you know, but that's the only caveat I would provide.
Gotcha. I got Alder Harrison, Alder Weiss.
Okay, my question is mostly an expectation setting. I'm wondering what the primary goal of bringing this topic tonight is. Are we trying to give a directive to city staff about how to continue their investigation on these two properties, or am I misunderstanding?
It's that and potentially more. Obviously, the council has discretion. I mean, we can take as much time or make the decision as fast as possible. I do think there is potentially a little bit of urgency on what to do about the Public Works thing, because it's been hanging out there for a long time. If that property that we've been looking at has been basically available for sale for a long time. However, you know, the longer we wait, the more chances it could get sold, and there's not a lot of property in Verona. So, like, I guess my preference for the council would be to urge, if not outright decisions, definitely a direction to staff, like, this is what's going to happen, and kind of proceed from there. And again, if people actually want Public Works at Range Trail, they should say so. If people want it somewhere else, they should say so. I do think that's kind of a really important part of this, where we kind of start to make decisions, because otherwise it's never going to get built. And I think if it is not already a problem for the city, it will start to become a problem if we don't improve the Public Works building.
Yeah, it becomes really easy if it goes at Range Trail.
Well, I mean, and that's a potential thing. If we take too long to decide we can't acquire property, it's possible that the council, whether it's the current people or new people, will just be like, you know what, we got Range Trail, we can build on Range Trail, we're done, we're building on Range Trail. But sorry, did you have any follow-ups on that?
Yeah, I do have one just comment. I think it would be ideal to put this on Wayland. However, I am not also like outright against putting this on Range Trail. That's just my 2 cents here.
Okay, I got Alder Weiss, then myself.
I am, is there some reason, so my concern is that we have an appraisal on what Range Trail is worth, but an appraisal is like everything else, right? It's just a theoretical number, and until there's somebody who's actually willing to put in the effort to, you know, do the math and figure out what they're willing to offer. I think that, I don't know if it's an either or situation where we have to do one or the other right away, but I do think that trying to get to somebody giving us an offer on Range Trail would be, or at least a preliminary offer on Range Trail would be the quicker we could get to that, I think the quicker we have a clarity around whether or not the equivalent of like a land swap is right, or if is there extra money from a land swap? Is there, because I think the details matter on this, right? And so, so my thought is that trying to get to an offer on the Range Trail property is advisable, and whatever we can do to get to that faster, I think that if we could do that coincidentally with, making an offer, making a contingent offer or something like that, I'd be in favor of that. But I wouldn't want to see us not get something more definitive on Range Trail than the appraisal, which I don't doubt that because these things are hard to appraise, right? I don't know how accurate an appraisal could possibly be on something like that, especially with the interest rate, interest rates being the way that they are now, and that being different than they were even a couple of months ago, and that being these types of things being very heavily contingent upon interest rates in terms of the long-term profitability of them. And then and then there was another thing that I was going to say that I forgot. So I'll
we can always come back to. I got a question for Mr. Manning and then some comments. But if you had to pick today between the two sites, which one is better and how definitive is it? Is it a little bit better, a lot better, the same?
I prefer the Wayland Road site. I think it's got better accessibility. Range Trail to me is kind of limited, but again, we own it, so I like what we own. But I think there's better land for us out there, and I like the Wayland Road property.
Okay. Yeah, and so then I guess, for the comment portion of it, I think we should try to put the Public Works building on Wayland. I think the building is ultimately supposed to be functional, and if it makes it easier for Public Works to operate out of, I think we should do that. As far as, what to do about the Range Trail property, my opinion is, for the RFP, if that's the direction we go, is we should have an RFP basically where we can try to get as much money as possible. This might involve being more flexible on density or what a potential property owner can do with the property, because, a big factor of land purchase is what can you do with it. If it's not very flexible, it's not worth as much money. If we just put it out to say, hey, we're flexible on some things, we want as much money as possible, then I think we'll get proposals in line with that. I mean, I think right now, as you saw at the previous meeting, the city's doing very well with our debt level. Unfortunately, of course, as part of building a new public work building, we're going to have to borrow money. It's just inevitable. And I feel like as much as we can minimize the borrowing, especially in this environment, the better off we are. And so to me, the way to kind of mitigate this is basically take the Range Trail property, offer flexibility, and try to get as much money as possible, because I think that'll be better for the financial health of the city, which is paid for by the residents and other property owners of the city. And I think that's kind of where I'm at. So Public Works on Wayland, RFP to get as much money as possible. Alder Hoaxton and then Alder Lytle.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've never been a fan of the location. And then especially when, however many years ago, we came out with the cost estimate for the Public Works building, that was off-putting. So I wouldn't say I'm 100% on the never on Range Trail, but pretty close. I think I think the neighbors too, not that there's anything wrong with a beautiful Public Works building. I think that they probably would likely find better use for that land. So yeah, I think I agree with your strategy.
Alder Lytle, then Alder Weiss.
So I think my opinion is that while an RFP would be the best end goal for actions like these, I think we shouldn't throw out the idea of issuing an RFI or a market expression of interest, which is something I would think we could make happen in a matter of weeks, to raise the level of awareness in the developer community without necessarily us fine-tuning exactly what needs to be in an RFP. So we could kick that process off, see what kind of interests we get from respondents. We could ask them as an optional to propose, what do you think you would like to put here? And we can we can then craft a more targeted RFP, So is getting the most money mean whoever is willing to pay the most, or is getting the most money mean we're going to have the highest equalized value, highest and best use proposed in the appraisal? I think we need to be clear on that a little more than at least I am right now. In parallel, I think signaling to Mr. Manning and Public Works in general that even if we're not 100% sure that the new site's going to be on Wayland, we can still go out for initial stages of a design contract, which is refreshing some of our space needs, some of our requests that are coming in from members of Public Works, program that into what would eventually be a conceptual design, but make sure we're syncing back up with the finalized site before we go any further than that. So I would love to see us take action on both sites or both fronts, rather than necessarily having a perfect answer for any question that might come up. But Attorney Kleinmeyer, I saw a couple reactions. I wanted to make sure I wasn't going off too weird of a road there.
No, I agree with what you said. I mean, I guess in my opinion, what you phrase this or what you call it. I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is to get for the city, from whoever is willing to, wants to participate in the process. What are you willing to pay for the land on Range Trail, and what would your proposed use be? And then I think you have the ability to evaluate it. So, this isn't like a public construction contract where you're required to take, essentially the most money. I mean, it may be that it turns out that whoever is willing to offer the most money also is putting the property to the use that you find most advantageous. It's also possible that, maybe the third highest bid is putting it to the use that you find most advantageous, and you're going to have the discretion to make that decision. But you're not going to be in a position to make that decision until you actually get the information. And, you can do different processes. I've seen municipalities do RFPs because that's kind of the formal way to get clarity on both of those issues from who's ever making the offer. Because listening to your discussion tonight and also just generally listening to discussions in Verona, how somebody is proposing to use the property is something that, the mayor said it, you said it, you're going to be interested in that. So that's, I think, the benefit of whatever process you use is getting information on both of those topics, use and price.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think what I saw as a benefit of going RFI, something more general, is we can put a tighter timeline on getting responses, and then, have that information to feel like more confident in either making an offer on Range or on Wayland or something along those lines. But, it's probably shades of gray, like you said, because we're not trying to craft an RFP that's so prescriptive that we have clear evaluation factors and we have to select whoever scores highest and that kind of thing.
I got Alder Weiss, then Alder Tucker Long.
Yeah, I remember the thing I was going to say, which was about that. I do think that the criteria is trying to maximize the value of the land in terms of just the transactional value of the land, in order to, offset the cost of building the public works buildings as well as acquire the land at the, because so I think that from a public interest standpoint, it's just, it's a piece of, it's a publicly owned piece of property. We should try to get the most value that we can for it. I think with, obviously there's probably some conceivable use of the land that all right-thinking people would object to or something. But I think that within the bounds of what can be easily conceived of, I think that we should be really trying to maximize the value of the land in just a very straightforward kind of way.
I got Alder Tucker Long and then myself.
So I know I've said my opinion before, but just to reiterate it during this discussion, through all of my discussions with Public Works staff over the last, 2 years, I think the Wayland property offers us better space, better access, more ways in and out of the property, but also it's not completely landlocked, so it gives us more flexibility in what we want to do with the property and what we might need to expand into if our population doubles again in the next 10 to 20 years. So, I feel like, yeah, we could look at what we need right now, or we could look at what we might need 10 to 20 years down the road. And I think it's better in the long run for the city if we try to look further down the road at what is truly the best option, not just the easiest option at the moment. So I'm definitely in favor of the Wayland property. I love the idea of putting out an RFP. Of course, as you all know, I would love to see some affordable housing money get used for some stuff. And so maybe a little bit of the Range Trail land could be, maybe we could do a project with the Affordable Housing Fund money there. But otherwise, I think the Range Trail property would be a great place for some housing. And that's something we desperately need, and something that's, despite interest rates and everything else that's happening in the market right now, housing is still selling very well in Verona. So I have complete confidence we could sell it if we need to. All right, that's it.
Yeah, just calling back on myself. Yeah, I just want to clarify my comments. Well, I do want the most money. There are certain uses, as has been said, that I wouldn't, doesn't matter how much they offer, like the data center that's powered by methane turbines, which seems to be poisoning all the neighbors, like I would be against that. But I was thinking more like housing or something like that. But I just wanted to clarify that. And obviously, as part of an RFP, we could put different scoring systems in and, whatever. I mean, I felt like we did have a very successful RFP process with the around the Century School project. And we did have different scoring systems where, affordable proposals with affordable housing were rated higher than other proposals. And obviously, if we're selling property, that would affect how much we can get for it. If we put restrictions on it, we'll get less money, although the council could decide that's worth it. But there's some options for the future. Alder Halke.
Yeah, I will echo what everybody else has said. I appreciate the thoughts. I think I'm glad that we've had this conversation over the years. I'm glad that we're expediting the process now. I agree with the Wayland Road property, and have never particularly liked the other property, the Range Trail property. So I'm grateful that we're moving forward, and just hope that we can do whatever it is that, with thoughtfulness, but also keeping it going as quickly as possible. So whatever that looks like for the RFP, and then talking to the other property owner at Wayland Road as to how we can keep that process moving. Anything we can do in that vein would be great.
I guess I have a question for staff. As far as how much land, I guess, would we need for the Public Works building now, and how much land would be, I guess, prudent to acquire long-term? I know that's a crystal ball question because we don't know how much the city's gonna grow, but are we talking 20 acres or?
Yeah, Range Trail's about 20. And I guess that's what I was shooting for over on Wayland's, about 20.
Okay. Would that just cover the current space needs, or would that cover future needs?
The plans that I've reviewed that were for Range Trail, there was room to grow. So it served our needs now. There was ability to add on to the building in the future, and there was also additional land that we could utilize as part of any future growth.
Okay.
So 20 is probably on the high side, but I'd rather aim high than pinch it right to the down to the square foot that we need now, and then be short in 5 years, 10 years, whatever the number is.
Alder Tucker-Long, and then Alder Harrison.
Yeah, I would say in looking at the appraisals of the Wayland property versus our Range Trail property, I would be in favor of trying to even get some extra property, because property is just going to continue to be more and more scarce in Verona. It's going to be more and more expensive. And so if we can get it for, a good price now, I would rather see us even get more than we think we need, because you can never have enough land, especially with how fast we're growing. And also keep in mind that the plans that we were talking about for having space to grow are already, 5 years old now? So, we may already be at the point where we would have needed to start expanding at that point. So more land is better, in my opinion.
Alder Harrison.
Yeah, to that same sort of end, I was just going to ask what the like lower bound of what we need now is. Like, if you could put an acreage, number on what your current needs are, how much higher is 20 than that number?
Yeah, I haven't been shooting low, so I guess I don't really have a bare minimum number that we could live with. Like I say, I've kind of done the quick comparison just because range is about 20 acres. And from the plans that I saw that have been developed to this point, there was plenty of room there to do what we needed both now and in the future. So I guess I didn't really do a low acreage study.
Yeah, I would be interested in what would be like the bare minimum that you could live with right now, just because I feel like that gives us an idea of how much space we really have to grow, like percentage-wise from where we are currently. And I think that would help inform the future-proofing conversation here of like, do we need even more land than just the 20-acre parcel that we're talking about now? If like we really need right now 18 or 19 of those 20 acres, then we have, some space to grow really, but not a ton. Yeah, I don't know. I guess if we could get ballpark figures of like what the lowest thing you need is, that would be really helpful in my opinion. That's all I got here.
Yeah, I guess I'm not going to be able to give you a number. But I think the acreage at Range Trail was useful for when it was acquired. And some of the limitations on Range Trail that I've seen is it has sanitary sewer running through it. It's got a couple water mains running through it. There's a drainage channel down the middle of it. So it's not like a clean 20, but the Whalen Road is. So it's probably not like apples to apples comparison. I think we're still further ahead on Whalen, even though the number of acres is similar.
I got Alder Helmke and then I think Alder Lytle.
Can you remind me how many acres was quoted in the Whalen property? I feel like it was significantly more, right? So
This would only be like a slice of it.
No, I understand that. So how much do we have to available?
Mr. Alec?
Well, the appraisal was for 70 some odd acres.
Yeah.
And then he just converted it to a per acre.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alder Lytle.
Yeah, just two comments. I think it's probably, in my opinion, not being the real engineer that former Alder Braithwaite is, it's probably unreasonable to ask Mr. Manning too detailed questions. I see no downside to authorizing an initial conceptual phase of the design for the facility. I think that will help you with your planning, even if we're not 100% locked into the Whalen Road site. The other comment is contagious. I'll leave it at that for now.
Other thoughts from the council? I guess how would we like staff to proceed? Would we like them to begin negotiations with the property on Whalen Road? I'm going to ask for a show of hands because I can't tell. Okay. And I don't know if Alder Swanson has the hand raised thing or not.
There it is.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's one part. And then I guess the second part is, are we looking at requests for information for Range Trail? Or do we want staff to do an RFP? Do we want to wait on it? I mean, what are people thinking? Alder Tucker-Long?
What's the time difference between an RFP versus an RFI? Is an RFP going to take us 6 months before we can get started on it? Whereas an RFI we could have in a few weeks, or what's the difference between the two?
I guess I would put that question to staff. How fast can you do each one?
I've never done an RFI, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I think it really just depends on the, I mean, if you want to have something that you did like for the West Verona Avenue property and the old school, that's probably going to take longer. If the thought process is, look, we don't want to place, understanding that not every use is going to be okay on Range Trail, but every rational and reasonable use, and you don't want to place limitations on that, I think that an RFP for that is probably going to look a lot like an RFI, and it's something that's going to be able to come together pretty quickly, because you're not going to have the restrictions or maybe the guardrails that you had on the West Verona Avenue property. This one might be a little bit more wide open, because it's very reasonable to say, look, you know, within reason, we do want the highest dollar amounts. And I'm very optimistic as it relates to the Range Trail property, because with Lucas not being here, I'm a little bit over my skis, but I do believe that it's probably, I do believe that right now what the appraisal identified as the highest and best use for that land is actually contemplated by the comp plan, which means that would fit well for the city. So that's a long-winded way of saying it might not take that long to get something back to you on that.
Alder Chockalong.
Sorry, one quick follow-up question. So if we put out an RFP and we don't put too many guardrails on it, what are our obligations for the proposals that come in? Do we have to accept any of them? No. Okay. Then I'd say, let's throw it out there and see what we get, you know, with the understanding maybe housing or mixed use, but nothing without housing.
Yeah, I guess I'll call myself. I do find an RFI appealing in the sense that, you know, we don't know what necessarily is out there. And I do feel like the RFP turned out excellent on West Verona Avenue. But this one, I feel like maybe we could try allowing more flexibility and see what people come up with. And again, we're not obligated to take any of these things. And if they're all terrible, we can do an RFP and say, okay, we tried without guardrails. That didn't work. We're going to put guardrails on. Okay, so I mean, do I see general consensus around an RFI? Just, again, we're not obligated to take it. Alder Weiss?
Yeah, I have no opinion on the RFI thing, and I'm out of my depth in terms of that, the peculiarities of those. But I just think moving quickly, I think to what's been said by the other council members and others is that I think moving quickly and trying to get to something is good, and whatever gets us there faster, I'm in favor of.
Alder Harrison?
Yeah, I'll second the, idea for flexibility in that proposal as well. I also don't care about RFI versus RFP. Today was the first time I've ever heard the phrase RFI. I think if that does offer a substantial benefit in terms of like speed of how quickly we could gauge interest in this property, then I say we take that benefit. Otherwise, RFP seems like where we're going anyways. So maybe just start there in the first place.
Other thoughts on how to proceed on the Range Trail property? Are people generally okay with an RFI? I'm seeing nodding heads.
Is that something that you want to come back to the council before it's published?
I guess my question then would be to staff, how comfortable do you feel, I guess, creating one of these things, and would you want to come back for guidance, or do you feel like you have enough guidance now?
I think I have enough. It's pretty wide open on what you're asking for, which is good. So.
Okay, I mean, does anyone want to see it before it goes out? I'm seeing shaking heads. It's okay. Alder Chockalong.
I wouldn't mind seeing it before it goes out, but could that be handled via email, like just a notification, or would it need to come back to council for us to see it before it goes out?
If it was sent out to the council and everyone had opinions, and now we're basically having a meeting over email.
If we're going to send it to you, I think my recommendation would be to actually then, with the idea of providing it to you ahead of a time of a meeting, where then you would,
okay.
I would say you have the discretion here. You don't have to vote on this tonight. In other words, you could tell staff, hey, go ahead and try to get this information. But to the extent that you want to see it before it goes out, which is certainly, something that's reasonable, then I believe it should come on the agenda, and then people would provide their comments at that meeting for the reasons that the mayor said.
Okay. And so I guess what's the timing on putting together the RFI? Like, would sending it to us before the next meeting be rushing you or slowing you down? Or what's your, I know you don't have an exact, but I'm just like, what's your feeling here?
There's a healthy 3 weeks between now and the next council meeting. So I can promise to do our best to get it for July 14th, and try our level best to do it.
So what you're saying is July 14th would be quick?
I think that would be pretty quick.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I think, yeah, because that was the question. If like, oh, we could get it done by Friday, I think maybe the preference would be just do it by Friday. If it's like, it's going to take to the 14th anyway, we might
There's
as
going to be
well.
some research involved and,
Okay.
yeah, looking at RFIs, doing some research on that.
Yeah. In that case, my preference would be for us to see it before it goes out, if that's not slowing, as long as that's not slowing down the process of getting it out.
No.
Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads, and also it'll be on the first July meeting anyway, so we'll get a chance to weigh in on it. Okay. Does anyone have any, I think that addressed everything?
Well, I yeah, I think that addressed everything on the Range Trail property. What I've also heard you say, Mayor, is have staff reach out and have further discussions with the folks on Wayland Road. I mean, if there's the definite possibility that they're going to watch this meeting, obviously they're going to hear the fact that the council is very interested. Everybody knows that comes with the caveat at the right price, but that doesn't prevent potentially positive discussions with them between now and the 14th, and who knows? I mean, maybe discussions go so well that you might have another document, you know, if that's the case, I mean, and I would hope that we would have this discretion, staff, if the discussions were really positive, we always have the ability to draft an offer to purchase. I'm not promising that that's going to happen at the 14th, but, you know, thinking positively and optimistically, that's something that could come back to you too then, depending on those discussions.
Okay. Alder Lytle.
Just kind of on the third item, which maybe wasn't really a third item, like Mr. Manning, like I don't want you to feel like either of these discussions, potential future actions limits us, in my opinion, from going out and getting design services, even pre-design services. And I know no one has a ton of time sitting around to draft that scope of work and RFP, but staff in general, is there any formal action we need to take?
Well, you really can't tonight because it's not on the agenda.
Right. No, I'm just saying, is that something we need to put on a future agenda, formal action to go out for pre-design services for the new Public Works facility? Because I've seen what exists for the previous one, and I don't think there's a lot that we're going to be able to reuse, my opinion, as the not real engineer.
I guess any comment on that, Mr. Manning?
Sure. Each site is unique. So as we've been going through this process and other properties have come up, we've done a very rough, basically grab shapes and just drop them in place to make sure they fit. I've done it myself for Wayland Road, so there's been no CAD involved. It's me and sketching it out. So it fits, but the topography is much different. I don't want to spend a bunch of money doing anything preliminarily if we're not actually going there. So I guess that's kind of where my head's at a little bit. We can make sure that our needs are met, but like arranging buildings and layout for the parking lot and the interconnectivity between the different facilities on site, I guess I'm not sure how much I'd want to explore if we're not going there.
My opinion is there was probably a fair bit of interviews with staff, you know, what equipment do we have? What equipment do we anticipate adding? What kind of storage and indoor, outdoor, those kind of things. I know everyone's very concerned about repeating that process where we don't need to, But I do think a structured needs assessment as part of the pre-design, getting that started, getting that updated with a lot of new staff and leadership from 5-6 years ago makes a lot of sense. I personally don't think that's money wasted, but
Sure.
irrespective of whether it's 100% that Wayland would be the site.
Okay. Yeah, I guess as far as a need study and, you know, what has changed in the past 5 to 10 years from when it was originally done, I guess I'm not as familiar on it, other than I know that we're bursting at the seams on investment court. So I know our current needs and I guess where my projections are heading. I've heard the process was long and painful, so I guess I'm not sure which step along the way I really want to dive into, but I'm starting with where am I building, and then we can go from there.
So I guess then if I could ask, a clarifying question, it basically, as soon as we have a pretty good idea of where it's going to go, then you'd feel free to, you'd have what you need to proceed then?
We probably should do some type of study to start with, because I guess my head was already jumping to the architect.
Yeah.
But we probably should reevaluate, you know, kind of how we got to where the range trail buildings got, and then maybe see what has changed and where we're heading with the Wayland Road buildings. And then I guess then next step for me is then I'm thinking of what to build and how to look and which direction, and so I'm already chasing down that path.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Seeing no further questions or comments, we'll move on to item 13, which is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Alder Hoax, seconded by Alder Humke. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 9:11 PM. Thank you, everyone.